Rising stars who lost everything. The dark side of 70s Hollywood fame. Fame doesn't just lift people up, sometimes it buries them. In the 1970s, Hollywood minted overnight legends, beautiful, talented, adored by millions. But behind the velvet ropes and magazine covers, something darker was growing. Drugs, debt, loneliness, betrayal. This is the story of the stars who had it all and lost everything. Some you'll remember, some you won't, but every single one of them paid a price nobody warned them about. How they entered Hollywood. Take Freddie Prinze, a kid from New York's Washington Heights, half Puerto Rican, half Hungarian, doing stand-up comedy in smoky clubs for almost nothing. By 1973, he was on The Tonight Show. By 1974, NBC handed him his own sitcom, Chico and the Man. He was 20 years old. Or look at Sal Mineo, discovered as a teenager, nominated for an Oscar before he could legally drink. Bobby Driscoll, once Walt Disney's golden boy, the literal voice and face of Peter Pan, plucked from obscurity as a small child. And then there was Gig Young, a respected character actor who spent decades grinding through supporting roles before finally winning an Academy Award in 1969 for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? A victory that should have secured his legacy for good. These weren't nepotism babies. They were outsiders who clawed their way in, and that's exactly what made their falls so devastating. But the climb was about to happen faster than any of them could prepare for. Rapid rise to stardom. Chico and the Man became one of the highest-rated shows on American television. Freddie Prinze was suddenly a sex symbol, a Vegas headliner, a millionaire before most people his age had finished college. Sal Mineo had starred alongside James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, instantly making him one of the most recognizable young actors in the country. The money came fast. The fame came faster. Premieres, magazine spreads, screaming fans outside hotel rooms. To the outside world, it looked like a fairy tale. For Gig Young, the Oscar win meant the kind of respect he'd chased his entire career. Suddenly, he was being offered roles he'd only dreamed about in his younger years, and Hollywood insiders treated his decades of patience as finally paying off. But fame at this speed comes with a hidden cost, and almost nobody around these young stars was prepared to help them carry it. Warning signs nobody noticed. Close friends later said Freddie Prinze had grown distant, exhausted, prone to mood swings. He reportedly carried a gun, at the time explained away as a prop, a quirk, even a joke among his crew. His marriage was collapsing. He was leaning more and more on Quaaludes, a sedative many stars of that era used to cope with insomnia and anxiety. Bobby Driscoll, years earlier, had been quietly dropped by Disney as he hit puberty, his boyish charm no longer marketable. Nobody checked in. Nobody offered guidance for a child star who'd lost the only identity he'd ever known. The signs were there. Isolation, substance use. Sudden silence from people who once couldn't stop smiling for cameras. Gig Young, meanwhile, was quietly cycling through marriages, 5 in total by the late 1970s, and colleagues on film sets had begun noticing erratic behavior and heavy drinking that the press rarely reported on. But in an industry built on image, nobody wanted to be the one to say something was wrong. Scandals, addiction, and career mistakes. In January 1977, Freddie Prinze was deep in a custody battle, drowning in depression, and reportedly battling addiction to prescription sedatives. Despite a hit show, he confided to people close to him that he felt hollow inside. Bobby Driscoll, after being cut loose by Hollywood, fell into heroin addiction. By the mid-1960s, he was arrested multiple times, his once famous face barely recognizable. Sal Mineo's career had cooled by the 1970s as Hollywood moved away from the type of roles that made him famous, pushing him towards smaller stage productions just to stay working and solvent. Gig Young's later years brought repeated divorces, mounting financial strain, and a reputation among casting directors as unreliable, a stunning reversal for a man who'd once stood on stage holding an Oscar. Money mismanagement, predatory contracts, and an industry with zero safety net for mental health turned early success into a ticking clock, and that clock was about to run out. The collapse. On January 28, 1977, Freddie Prinze died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound at just 22 years old, days after a heartbreaking phone call to his estranged wife. The nation was stunned. A man with a hit show, millions of fans, and a baby son, gone. Bobby Driscoll's collapse was quieter, crueler. In 1968, his body was found in an abandoned tenement in New York City, dead from heart failure linked to years of drug abuse. He was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave because no one came forward to identify him. It would take over a year before fingerprints confirmed who he was. Sal Mineo's story ended differently but just as abruptly, murdered outside his West Hollywood apartment in 1976 during what investigators determined was a botched robbery, cutting short any chance of the career resurgence he'd been fighting for. Gig Young's ending was perhaps the most shocking of all. In October 1978, just 3 weeks into his fifth marriage, he died in a murder-suicide at his New York apartment. The Oscar-winning actor and his new wife found dead together, leaving Hollywood searching for answers that never fully came. 4 different paths, 4 different decades of fame. The same devastating ending, gone too soon, with the world only realizing what was lost after it was already too late. The lesson and legacy. Today, Hollywood talks about mental health, intimacy coordinators, and child actor protections, reforms that came directly from tragedies like these. Freddie Prinze's son grew up to become a star in his own right, often crediting his father's story for shaping how seriously he protects his own well-being. Sal Mineo is remembered as a trailblazer whose talent outlived the system that underused him. Bobby Driscoll's unmarked grave became a symbol cited for decades in conversations about how Hollywood discards child stars, and Gig Young's tragic final chapter is still studied as a cautionary tale about how even a lifetime of hard-won success can unravel in an instant when no one is paying attention. Fame didn't kill these men, neglect did. An industry that built them up, profited from them, and walked away the moment they needed help. So the next time you watch an old movie or laugh at a 1970s rerun, remember the names behind the screen. Because the real tragedy of Hollywood's golden decade isn't who became famous, it's who paid for it with everything they had. If their stories moved you, subscribe, because next time we're uncovering the stars Hollywood tried to erase entirely.